I never thought a single night could change everything I knew about myself. I was just a regular student, blending into the background, the kind of kid teachers barely noticed unless I messed up. But that night, everything shifted, and it started with a text from my homeroom teacher, Ms. Carter, someone I had always respected but also feared just a little. She was strict, meticulous, and had a reputation for pushing students far beyond their comfort zones. I had no idea she was about to push me farther than I'd ever imagined. It began innocuously enough. I had stayed after class for extra help in math, not because I was struggling, but because I wanted to impress her with my dedication. She smiled at my persistence, but that smile had something unreadable behind it. When I left, she asked me to come to her house that evening to review some advanced problems. I agreed, thinking it was just another tutoring session. I never suspected that reviewing problems would involve completely rethinking who I was. I arrived at her house around 7, the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Her house was immaculate, every book perfectly aligned, every surface polished. She greeted me warmly, but there was a tension in her eyes, a spark that made my stomach twist. She led me to a small study, walls lined with books, and a desk neatly organized with papers and pens. I settled in, thinking she would hand me a worksheet or something similar. Instead, she closed the door gently, almost ceremoniously, and turned to me with an expression that was serious and oddly soft at the same time. "I have something special planned for you tonight," she said. My first instinct was to laugh nervously, thinking she meant an unconventional teaching method, but the way she said it made me stop in my tracks. "You're going to experience a different perspective," she continued. My mind raced. I had no idea what she meant, but I felt an inexplicable mix of fear and curiosity. Before I could protest, she handed me a neatly folded pile of clothes. At first glance, they looked like they belonged to a woman, a delicate blouse, a pleated skirt, stockings, and soft shoes. My eyes widened in shock. What is this?" I stammered. "You'll understand soon," she said calmly. Her tone wasn't cruel, but there was no room for argument. She insisted I try them on immediately. My pulse accelerated, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I was terrified. I had never imagined being forced into something so outside of my world, something so public yet terrifyingly private all at once. I followed her instructions reluctantly, excusing myself to the guest room to change. The clothing felt alien in my hands, soft and delicate in ways I wasn't accustomed to. My hands trembled as I unfolded each piece, my mind screaming that this was wrong, but some part of me in absurd, quiet curiosity was intrigued. I began with the blouse, sliding my arms through the sleeves. The fabric brushed against my skin, sending a strange shiver down my spine. It was soft, silky, and feminine in a way that made me acutely aware of my body in a completely new way. Next came the skirt. I hesitated for a long moment, staring at the pleats, imagining walking around in it. When I finally stepped into it, the fabric wrapped around my legs differently than any pants ever had. I adjusted it nervously, my movements awkward, self-conscious. When I added the stockings and the soft shoes, I felt unrecognizable. Standing there in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My reflection looked like a version of me I had never met, a self that was fragile, elegant, and strangely compelling. Miss Carter entered the room then, her gaze sharp yet gentle. "Look at yourself," she said. I hesitated but obeyed. Seeing myself through her eyes was a strange, dizzying experience. There was no judgment, only expectation, and a strange kind of trust that she had in me, even as she orchestrated this radical transformation. "I want you to stay in this outfit tonight," she said. "Not just for practice. I want you to live in it, even if just for a few hours. I want you to feel what it's like to see the world differently." My heart raced. The idea of spending the entire night dressed like this felt impossible, humiliating even. Yet, part of me was curious. Part of me wanted to see if I could do it, if I could survive the experience she was putting me through. The first moments were unbearable. Every movement reminded me of my vulnerability. The fabric of the skirt pressed against my thighs in ways pants never did, the stockings felt like a soft barrier I was not used to, and the shoes constrained my feet in a way that made each step deliberate. I was hyper-aware of everything: the sound of my shoes on the floor, the brush of the fabric against my skin, the way my hands felt exposed without the cover of pockets. I felt like an entirely different person, yet I was still me, trapped in a form I didn't recognize. Ms. Carter observed silently, occasionally giving me instructions about posture, movement, even the tilt of my head. She wasn't cruel, but her guidance was firm, unyielding. By the time dinner arrived, I realized I couldn't even sit naturally. Every gesture required conscious thought. Eating became an exercise in control, careful to avoid spilling anything, careful not to draw attention to my discomfort. Every bite reminded me that I was being tested, not just physically but mentally and emotionally. Hours passed slowly. I found myself staring into mirrors more than I ever had, fascinated and horrified at the transformation. The face looking back at me seemed familiar and foreign all at once. I saw the contours of my features softened, framed by the gentle lines of the blouse and the delicate curve of the skirt. I felt exposed, yet there was a strange thrill in the vulnerability, a sense that I was discovering a hidden part of myself I had never known existed. Then came the hardest part: going outside. Ms. Carter insisted that we step into the backyard for a short walk. The cold night air hit me, sending shivers through my body. I felt completely self-conscious, acutely aware that this version of me, soft, delicate, hypervisible, was being exposed to the world, even if only the quiet darkness of her backyard. My steps were hesitant, unsure, each one a test of my courage. She guided me gently, correcting my posture, encouraging me to move with confidence. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, yet a strange sensation grew inside me: empowerment. I was terrified, but in a way, I was learning control, learning to inhabit a body and a form that felt alien, yet strangely alive. By the time we returned inside, exhaustion had settled over me, but it was different from the usual tiredness. This was the kind of exhaustion that comes from stretching limits, from confronting yourself in ways you never imagined. The night stretched on, and Ms. Carter continued her lessons, but not about schoolwork. She asked questions, guided conversations, made me reflect on identity, self-perception, and courage. I realized she wasn't punishing me or mocking me. She was opening a door I never knew existed, forcing me to confront fears, insecurities, and assumptions about who I was. The clothes were just the beginning. The real lesson was inside me, the confrontation with my own boundaries and the vulnerability I had long avoided. By midnight, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. Sitting in the quiet study, dressed in a way that had once felt impossible, I began to feel something unexpected: acceptance. Not complete understanding, not total comfort, but a strange, thrilling acknowledgement that this experiment, this forced journey, was teaching me something profound about myself. I was still me, yet I had touched a version of myself I had never dared to meet. When I finally lay down on the guest bed, the blouse soft against my skin and the skirt arranged carefully around me, I thought about the night's events. The fear, the shame, the embarrassment, they were still there, simmering beneath the surface, but so was curiosity, courage, and a strange sense of self-discovery. I realized then that Ms. Carter's experiment wasn't about humiliation. It was about revelation, about exposing the parts of us that remain hidden until someone or something forces us to confront them. And as I drifted into sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same. The next day, the world would look different, and so would I. I didn't yet know how, but something inside me had shifted, something that would follow me forever. Morning came with a light that felt alien through the curtains. I woke slowly, muscles stiff and mind buzzing from the previous night's revelations. For a moment, I forgot where I was, until I remembered the blouse, skirt, stockings, and shoes I was still wearing. I had expected to take them off in the safety of sleep, but my body still held onto them as if they had become a part of me overnight. Panic surged for a brief moment, but instead of removing the clothes, I stayed frozen, staring at the floor, trying to process everything. Ms. Carter appeared then, holding a tray with breakfast, her expression calm but intense. "Good morning," she said, placing the tray on the bedside table. There was no mockery in her tone, only a quiet authority that made me shiver. "How do you feel?" she asked, sitting across from me. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. Was I embarrassed? Curious? Awakened? All of it surged at once, leaving me speechless. Different, I finally whispered. She nodded, not surprised. Good. That's what I hoped for. Her words carried a weight I couldn't quite place, as if she had known all along that this experiment would dig deeper than clothes or appearances. She encouraged me to eat, to move, to continue wearing the outfit as we planned the day's activities. The first challenge came when she asked me to join her in the kitchen to help prepare breakfast for her family. The idea of being seen in the outfit by anyone else made my stomach churn. I felt exposed, anxious, every step awkward in the unfamiliar shoes. But she guided me, correcting my posture, showing me how to move with grace, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, my confidence began to grow. As we moved through the morning, she started asking questions about school, friends, and life in general, but always circling back to identity. Have you ever wondered who you might be if you let yourself explore beyond what you've always known? She asked while I carefully chopped vegetables. I froze, knife in hand. She wasn't talking about school subjects anymore. This was personal, probing, intimate, and somehow necessary. I shook my head, hesitant to admit I hadn't. I guess I've never really thought about it, I mumbled. She smiled gently, as if she had expected the answer. That's why tonight and today are important. You're stepping into a perspective you've ignored, avoided, or maybe even feared. And that fear is natural. But now you have a choice, to face it or hide from it. Her voice was calm, not scolding, yet carried an undeniable urgency. Hours passed. Breakfast was served, and her family briefly noticed me but didn't comment, leaving me in a strange limbo of awareness and invisibility. I moved carefully, observing reactions, sensing their curiosity but not ridicule. I began to realize that the discomfort wasn't coming from others, it was internal. Every glance, every movement, every reflection in a window or mirror forced me to confront myself. I was both terrified and fascinated. By afternoon, Ms. Carter suggested we do something more challenging. We're going out, she said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. My heart sank. The thought of walking outside, even just a short distance, in this outfit, with the possibility of being seen, made my stomach knot. I don't know if I can, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. You can, she said firmly. I'll be with you. This is about courage, not just clothing. You've worn them inside, now it's time to step out. I felt a swirl of emotions: fear, anticipation, disbelief, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. The moment had come. Stepping out onto the porch, the wind brushing against the skirt, I felt raw exposure. Every passerby, every sound of life outside her house, seemed amplified. She guided me along the sidewalk, hand gently on my back, correcting my steps, my posture, the tilt of my head. With each step, I felt my confidence waver, then rebuild, small increment by small increment. By the time we returned, sweaty and exhilarated, I had begun to feel a strange pride. I had done it. I had faced the world, even if only briefly, as someone I had never been. Back inside, she introduced me to exercises that went beyond movement. Sit, stand, gesture, speak, she instructed. Every small action shapes perception of yourself and others. You're learning to inhabit this form fully, not just wear it. I struggled at first. Gestures felt unnatural, my voice unsteady, movements tentative. But with each repetition, something shifted. I wasn't just wearing clothes, I was learning to embody them. I was discovering how much power there is in posture, in grace, in subtlety. By evening, exhaustion settled over me again, but this time it was different. It was no longer just physical, it was emotional, intellectual, and strangely liberating. I had confronted fear, exposure, and self-consciousness, and I had survived. More than that, I felt a strange curiosity growing, a desire to explore further, to understand why the night had affected me so profoundly. Dinner that evening was quiet, reflective. Ms. Carter asked me questions about my feelings, about self-perception, about the difference between who I had been and who I might be. I struggled to articulate the complex emotions swirling inside me. Fear, shame, curiosity, empowerment, all tangled together in a way I had never experienced. But slowly, as I spoke, I realized that this night, this forced transformation, was revealing parts of me I had long ignored or suppressed. After dinner, she asked me to sit by the fireplace while she prepared tea. The room was warm, flickering shadows dancing on the walls. I felt small, delicate, vulnerable, yet profoundly alive. She handed me the cup, and I sipped, feeling the warmth spread through me. She observed me silently for a long moment before speaking. "You're stronger than you realize," she said softly. "And braver. But courage isn't just facing danger. It's facing yourself, your limits, your fears. That's what you did today." I felt tears prick my eyes, unbidden and confusing. For so long, I had hidden parts of myself, convinced they were weaknesses. Yet tonight, exposed in every sense, I discovered that vulnerability could coexist with strength. That fear could coexist with empowerment. That uncertainty could coexist with curiosity. I was beginning to understand that this transformation was not just about clothing, it was about identity, perception, and courage. As the clock ticked past midnight again, she suggested one final task for the night, a self-reflection exercise. "Stand in front of the mirror," she instructed, "and look at yourself. Speak aloud what you see, not what you think others see, but what you feel inside." My hands shook as I approached the mirror, my reflection familiar and foreign all at once. I took a deep breath, voice trembling, and began to speak. Words tumbled out: fear, discomfort, but also awe, curiosity, recognition. I described how my body felt, how my posture felt, how my emotions intertwined with the delicate fabric of the clothes. And as I spoke, something remarkable happened. I stopped seeing the outfit as an imposition and started seeing it as a tool, a lens through which I could explore who I really was. I realized I had been given a gift disguised as a challenge, a chance to confront myself, to step beyond fear, and to inhabit a form that revealed truths I had long avoided. When I finally collapsed into the guest bed again, exhaustion heavy but mind alight, I understood that nothing would ever be the same. The fear, vulnerability, and exposure of the day had been transformative. I had been forced, yes, but I had also chosen, in subtle ways, to embrace the discomfort, to explore, to grow. And as sleep finally claimed me, I realized that the night's lessons would ripple into every corner of my life. The next morning hit me like a wave I wasn't prepared for. Sunlight spilled into the room, illuminating the delicate folds of the skirt I was still wearing, the blouse soft against my skin, and the stockings that clung unnaturally to my legs. I had thought the previous day would be the hardest, but now, waking fully aware of what the night had changed, I felt a new kind of anxiety, one that gnawed at my stomach and tightened my chest. The reflection in the mirror no longer shocked me, it unsettled me, not because it looked strange, but because it revealed truths I hadn't been ready to confront. Ms. Carter appeared almost immediately, her presence calm yet commanding. "Good morning," she said, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But everything was extraordinary. "Today," she began, "we will extend your experience beyond these walls. It's time to see yourself in the world." My heart raced. "The world?" I echoed, my voice catching in my throat. "Yes. Your comfort zone ends here," she said, her tone gentle but unwavering. "You've learned to inhabit your body in private. Now, let's test how you move through public spaces." I swallowed hard, imagining walking down streets, sitting in cafes, even passing strangers. Panic threatened to rise, but there was no turning back. She guided me through small exercises first, standing in the garden, moving gracefully from one step to another, practicing gestures, practicing a smile. Each movement felt foreign, each glance at myself in reflective surfaces a reminder of my new reality. By late morning, we were ready. She took me to a small, quiet cafe not far from her house. The streets were empty enough to avoid scrutiny, but not so empty that I felt safe. My pulse hammered in my ears as we approached. Every step in those soft shoes felt amplified, every swish of the skirt around my thighs a reminder of vulnerability. She held my hand lightly, guiding me through the doorway. Inside, the world didn't react as harshly as I expected. People glanced, some with curiosity, some with indifference. But it wasn't their reaction that mattered, it was mine. I realized I was hyper-aware of every movement, every breath, every flicker of attention. I had spent my life avoiding exposure, hiding behind comfort and familiarity. Now, under the delicate weight of fabric and expectation, I had nowhere to hide. Ms. Carter encouraged me to order, to speak confidently. My voice trembled at first, high-pitched and unfamiliar even to myself. But with her gentle corrections, I adjusted, and slowly, the trembling faded. I began to notice something strange. The more I embraced the role, the easier it became. The fear didn't vanish, but it transformed, morphing into focus, awareness, and even a thrill. After the cafe, we walked through a nearby park. The sunlight caught the skirt just right, highlighting the soft movement of the fabric as I stepped carefully on the path. Children played nearby, dogs ran past, and couples strolled arm in arm. Every glance, every laugh, every whispered comment seemed magnified in my mind. Yet, as we continued, something shifted. I started to feel a quiet power in my vulnerability, a strange satisfaction in facing exposure and surviving it. Each step was a small triumph. By the time we returned to her house, my legs ached, my feet sore, but my mind was alight. I realized that the clothes, the forced transformation, and the public exposure were tools. They were ways to confront fears, insecurities, and preconceived notions about myself. I felt raw, exposed, yet somehow more authentic than ever before. Ms. Carter didn't stop there. She asked me to reflect, to write down every emotion I had felt during the day, every fear, every moment of empowerment. I struggled at first, unsure how to articulate the storm inside me. But as I wrote, I realized that each word, each sentence, was a step toward understanding myself. I had always avoided introspection, but now, forced into this new identity, I couldn't. I had to confront the layers I had hidden, to face the version of me that had been invisible even to myself. Evening arrived, bringing with it a new challenge. Ms. Carter had invited a close friend over, a woman who worked in fashion and had experience in personal transformation. She wasn't there to judge, she explained, but to observe and guide. My stomach twisted at the thought of another person seeing me like this, dressed in delicate clothing, exposed in ways I had never imagined. But there was no escape. When her friend arrived, I barely recognized the words that came out of my mouth. I stuttered, hesitated, and blushed, yet both women treated me with a mix of curiosity and respect. They asked questions about how I felt, about my experience, about my fears and discoveries. Their presence magnified my vulnerability, but it also amplified my awareness of myself. Every gesture, every movement, every glance in the mirror became deliberate. I wasn't just wearing clothes anymore, I was learning to inhabit them fully, to express a self I had barely known existed. By nightfall, exhaustion had returned, heavier than ever. My body was sore, my mind buzzing with reflection, yet there was a new clarity, a strange exhilaration in having faced the world and survived, in having confronted exposure and emerged intact. Ms. Carter guided me back to the study, where we sat in quiet reflection. She encouraged me to look in the mirror again, to speak aloud what I had discovered about myself. And this time, I spoke without hesitation. I described fear and empowerment, shame and curiosity, vulnerability and strength. I realized that the night, the day, and the forced transformation had revealed layers of me I had long avoided. The reflection staring back wasn't just the student I had been, it was a person learning courage, learning authenticity, learning self-acceptance. As I prepared for sleep that night, I felt a strange sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps even deeper revelations. I had survived the first wave, confronted exposure, and begun to embrace transformation not as an imposition, but as a journey. I didn't yet know where it would lead, but I knew one thing: I could no longer ignore the person staring back at me in the mirror. The night closed over me, and with it came a quiet understanding. The forced experience, once terrifying, had become a pathway to self-discovery. I had learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving through it. That vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a bridge to understanding oneself. And that transformation isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, and deeply personal. Morning light spilled into the room differently this time. I woke with a sense of anticipation rather than dread, my body still dressed in the delicate blouse, pleated skirt, stockings, and soft shoes that had become an extension of me. The reflection in the mirror no longer unsettled me. Instead, it carried a quiet authority, a recognition of someone I was beginning to understand and accept. I was nervous, yes, but I was also aware that I had crossed a threshold I could never unsee. Miss Carter appeared almost immediately, smiling gently, her eyes reflecting both expectation and pride. "Today is the final part of your journey," she said softly. "You've faced fear, exposure, and vulnerability. Today, you will see how far you've come." My stomach twisted, a mix of excitement and terror. I knew this day would be different. I sensed that what awaited me would test not just my appearance, but my perception of myself. Our first task was simple in theory but daunting in practice: interaction with the community. She guided me to speak confidently, to carry myself with poise, to inhabit the presence of the person I had become over the past 2 days. Every movement, every gesture, every expression was deliberate. And yet, for the first time, I felt a strange freedom in it. There was power in the vulnerability, courage in the exposure, and a strange exhilaration in inhabiting a form that had once terrified me. We walked through nearby streets, greeting neighbors, passing strangers, and entering shops. At first, I stumbled, my voice faltering, my hands twitching nervously. But each step, each interaction, strengthened a new awareness. I was learning that self-perception is fluid, shaped as much by courage and choice as by external circumstances. Ms. Carter observed quietly, occasionally guiding me, correcting a posture, adjusting a gesture, or encouraging a smile. By the time we returned to her house, I felt a transformation beyond the physical. I was no longer merely wearing clothes, I was becoming someone capable of facing the world, of accepting complexity within myself. The next challenge brought an even deeper confrontation, reflection and dialogue. We sat in her study, the air thick with anticipation. She asked me to recount every moment of discomfort, every pang of fear, every flicker of curiosity and empowerment. Speaking aloud, I realized that the clothing had been a tool, yes, but the true transformation had been within. I spoke of identity, perception, courage, and vulnerability, articulating insights I had never been able to put into words. The act of speaking, of acknowledging, solidified the lessons I had learned. By afternoon, she presented another test: photography. I froze, heart racing at the thought of being captured in images, permanently documented in the delicate, feminine attire I now inhabited. She explained that the purpose was not exposure, ridicule, or vanity, but self-recognition. The camera was a tool for seeing oneself fully, objectively, and honestly. With each click, I observed the reflection of someone simultaneously familiar and unknown. The lens revealed subtle expressions, small gestures, and nuances I had never noticed. Each photograph became a mirror, each image a conversation with the self I had been avoiding. Evening arrived, bringing a quiet culmination. Ms. Carter guided me to a mirror, the largest in the house, where I could see every aspect of my transformation. Standing there, I traced the outline of my reflection, noting the softness of fabric against skin, the curves and lines shaped by the clothing, and the expression of someone learning to inhabit a body fully, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. I realized that the journey was not about who I appeared to be to others, it was about acknowledging the parts of myself I had hidden, denied, or ignored. And then came the moment of acceptance. I took a deep breath, letting every fear, every embarrassment, every tension dissolve into the quiet understanding that had been building over days of discomfort and courage. I spoke aloud, not just describing the reflection, but affirming it. I acknowledged the vulnerability, the curiosity, the courage, the evolving sense of identity. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The transformation was not an imposition, nor was it temporary. It was a revelation, a guide to understanding the depth and fluidity of self. Ms. Carter watched silently, her eyes soft with satisfaction. "You see it now," she said. "This is not just about clothing or appearances. This is about you. About what you're capable of, what you can embrace, and what you can accept. Fear, vulnerability, and courage are all parts of the same journey. You've taken the steps, and now you can walk forward with awareness." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes, a mix of relief, pride, and understanding washing over me. The blouse, the skirt, the stockings, the shoes, they were no longer tools of discomfort. They were markers of growth, symbols of a journey that had forced me to confront myself fully, honestly, and courageously. That night, as I prepared for sleep, I felt a quiet resolution. The past days had been exhausting, challenging, and disorienting, yet profoundly enlightening. I had faced fear and exposure, confronted identity and perception, and discovered strength within vulnerability. I realized that the lessons would remain, far beyond the clothing, far beyond the moments of discomfort. The next morning, when I finally left Ms. Carter's house, the world seemed different. I walked with a newfound awareness, an understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. Vulnerability is not weakness, but a bridge to authenticity. And transformation is not just external, it is a journey of the heart, mind, and soul. As I returned home, I reflected on the journey, the night of being forced into feminine clothing, the subsequent days of exposure, self-reflection, and guidance. The memory no longer brought shame, but understanding. I had been pushed, yes, but I had also chosen, consciously or unconsciously, to embrace the discomfort and discover myself. And in that realization, I found peace. I was no longer just the student who had walked into Ms. Carter's house days ago. I was someone who had faced fear, embraced vulnerability, and stepped into a fuller understanding of self. The clothes, once foreign and frightening, had become instruments of revelation. The reflection in the mirror was no longer a stranger, it was a companion, a guide, and a reminder of courage discovered and identity embraced. That night, lying in my own bed, I finally slept without anxiety or tension. I had been transformed not just in appearance, but in awareness, courage, and self-acceptance. And I knew, without doubt, that the lessons I had learned would accompany me for the rest of my life. The journey had been uncomfortable, even terrifying at times, but it had been worth every moment. I had discovered that the greatest transformations are not imposed externally, they are discovered internally, through courage, reflection, and the willingness to confront every hidden part of ourselves. And as I drifted into sleep, I smiled softly, knowing that the journey was far from over, but that I was finally ready to walk it with eyes wide open, fully aware of who I was and who I could become.